Right now, let's talk about the latest woke madness, because we could do basically 3 hours on this every single day, but I always like to talk about the latest madness because we mustn't let it pass. Maya Forstadt is Chief Executive of Sex Matters and joins us, as she regularly does, to talk about the latest insanity going on in the world. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, Julia.
I mean, just don't know where we start. NHS midwives have been recording the gender identity of newborns as opposed to their actual sex, including even their sexual orientation. I'm not sure you know the sexual orientation or the gender identity of your child when they're born. What you know is whether they've got a penis or not, and you can go, that's a boy, that's a girl. Used to be really simple, didn't it?
Yes, I mean, this is a computer system that the NHS has brought in from the US. It's called EPIC, and it was brought in under the Biden administration, and it does ask your sex assigned at birth and then in inventory of organs. So it treats people like they're made out of Lego, basically. Do they have a penis? Do they have testicles? Do they have a vulva? What combination of those things do they have? It's complete nonsense. And we first raised this in 2023, and the NHS said that those things were voluntary and only to be used for people who were having gender reassignment surgery. But here again, we're hearing that NHS nurses, midwives are being trained to use it for logging.
And there's not just one. I mean, this one of the biggest hospitals. I mean, it's just around the corner from here. Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital are using it, but at least 10 NHS hospitals use this, and King's College and the hospital as well. Again, these are major teaching hospitals, but at least 10 NHS hospitals around the country are using this. And midwives are going, well, where's the form for male and female? And this is just basically woke madness in the Biden administration, just being brought over here. And is the excuse that, well, we've got this software and we can't adjust it, but can it be changed, or can't they just say, sorry, ignore all of that stuff, because obviously this is a medical form and it's about facts, not nonsense.
Exactly, that's what they should do. They can always, the NHS is a big customer. They can always change fields. You know, they don't have to accept what any supplier gives them. But this seems to be going further than that. It's being brought back into the training, and midwives are being told to think about babies as having a sex assigned at birth rather than just having a sex.
Well, we've had a minister, a Labour MP. I mean, you know, talking about that. You know, that babies aren't born boys or girls; they're assigned sex. People who are elected members of Parliament have said this nonsense. For goodness' sake,
it's madness, as you said.
Yeah.
In the medical schools, it's in the Department for Health. It really needs a root and branch removal.
But I mean, you guys, you've done amazing things, you know, on trying to tackle all this madness and legal cases and that. But it's also up to all of us. It's up to staff, and we know, you know, nurses not wanting to have a man undressed watching them, pretending he's a woman, watching them getting changed. You know, they're basically losing their jobs, having to fight long court cases that take years. And we've had some, you know, the Darlington nurses and others, you know, these amazing victories. Sandy Peggy, that sort of partial victory. But you know, it's also up to us as patients saying, no, I will not have that. I mean, I remember going to the optician a year or two ago and just saying, no, why have you got my gender identity? Or you know, non-binary. That's not a thing. This should not be on this form. I went to the gynaecologist and there was some nonsense on that. I went, well, of course I'm female. Otherwise, I wouldn't be at a gynaecologist. I can't be anything but. I shouldn't be here otherwise. And
exactly.
and they all go, oh, I know. And it's like, well, speak up then. Speak up, and you know, we've got to all speak up. But this is it. The NHS is so totally captured, and as we've seen with these nurses just wanting the most basic levels of dignity, like not to have a man watch them get out, you know, down to their bra and knickers in a changing room. They're scared to speak up.
And when you've just given birth, you should not have to be arguing with the bureaucracy about not recording nonsense about your child.
Yeah, and again, it's like, you know, referring to, you know, someone who identifies as trans when they commit a crime, or this amazing spike we've seen in female violent crime and sexual assaults because they're committed by men. So whether it's a census, a criminal document, you know, involving the criminal justice system, or you know, NHS or a voting document, it needs to record facts, verifiable, objective truth, not what someone feels on a Wednesday afternoon.
Exactly. And it starts at birth and it goes all the way through your life. You cannot change sex, and where people need that information, whether your doctor needs that information, whether the justice system needs that information, it has to be accurate. It should be accurate.
This was something that wasn't even up for debate until 10 years ago. It's bizarre. One thing that wasn't up for debate for 10 years ago was the idea that we had to use someone's preferred pronouns, because pronouns have a meaning, a meaning in biology, and it's very, very clear referring to a man or a woman or plural. And they also, they're grammatically correct or not. We constantly have this phrase of misgendering people, where, you're not misgendering if you call a man he or him or his, when he is a man, whether he calls himself a woman or not, you're not misgendering, you're being correct. But we've got a whole load of other pronouns that have crept in, and there's been an extraordinary row between the Green Party and Emma Bateman. So Bateman, she was the co-chairman of the Green Party women's group. She's now suing the Green Party after they suspended her because they accused her of mocking someone and refusing to use someone's, I kid you not, fairy pronouns. This is someone who identified as a part of the fairy people, didn't know that was a thing. Presumably they were at the bottom of the garden when they did this, and wanted to be referred to using, I don't even know how to pronounce these, fair pronouns, because they believe they're sort of basically mythical beings. And basically Emma Bateman refused, and now she's suing them for suspending her. Again, is this a Monty Python sketch?
Well, Emma was making a joke. I mean, that's the funny thing. She wasn't even misgendering somebody. What she was doing was making a speech about pronouns, and she said something like, every time somebody's misgendered, a person with fair pronouns dies.
It's a great joke. That's a great joke.
Guys. There wasn't even anyone who takes these ridiculous pronouns there, and somebody weaponized that against her. They used that to try and get rid of her because she has said that men are not women and that women's rights need protecting.
Yeah. She's an old school feminist, basically, who understands basic biological fact.
She is, and she's a Green. She should be there fighting for the environment, not having to fight for basic facts.
Yeah, it's genuinely quite terrifying. Whenever we read these stories, a reason I always want to talk about them, as mad as they are, is that when, political parties, organisations like the NHS, universities, wherever, when they're spending their time on this nonsense, they are not doing the job we need them to do for us. Keir Starmer has been out defending his decision today to vote in the NEC to block Andy Burnham from leaving the Manchester mayoralty to stand in this Horton and Garden by-election, saying, look, this is about funds, this is about your risk of losing a mayoralty as well. Is that a fair reason to have blocked Andy Burnham?
Well, look, I think the PM was in a very difficult position, actually. I think he couldn't really do right for doing wrong in this situation. I think the excuse will be that it was about the fact that a by-election for the mayoralty would be required, and that's costly not just for the Labour Party, but for the taxpayer.
$4 million, apparently.
It seems an awful lot of money, but my answer to that, Julia, is democracy is expensive, but it's very important. And if Andy Burnham, God love him, had have stood down because he had to stand down, i.e. he was ill or any other reason, that have had to have that democracy in order to ensure that we elect a person to represent the region as Greater Manchester mayor. I think the honest answer from me would be the reason that he was blocked by the NEC, and they're entitled to do it, was because they thought he'd be a challenger against the leader and it'd be destabilising.
Destabilising for the Labour Party, destabilising for the country, or destabilising for Keir Starmer and his little coterie of mates in number 10?
Well, I think probably both, actually. I think if there's a contest against the leader of a political party who happens to be a PM, I think it destabilises the country, and I think the markets shift and there's a reaction. I think this psychodrama, which the electorate can't stand, it happened with the Tories. We've not learned from our recent history in politics in that regard. But the truth is, it was to stop Burnham, and that's just the reality, because they thought he might challenge Keir. I don't think he would. I think
you don't think he would?
I don't think he would. I think, look, there's no doubt that Andy Burnham has got ambitions in politics and he wants to be the PM, but there ain't a vacancy. You know, stop Burnham then.
They're often, my experience, been political journalists for a very long time, that they don't tend to always wait for a vacancy, and you know as well as I do, with facing a trouncing in the local elections in Wales and Scotland. It could see Labour wiped out, for goodness sake, possibly losing, you know, a by-election for the mayor of Greater Manchester as well, equivalent to 20 constituencies in the north, which is supposed to be the stronghold of Labour. I mean, there's no question at all. There will be a challenge to Keir Starmer, in which case, would Andy Burnham, were he an MP in Parliament, would he be your first choice as a replacement?
No, he wouldn't. It wouldn't be my first choice.
Who would be?
I don't want a contest, but I think what we need to do...
You don't want a contest?
I don't want a contest for the leadership. No, I want the PM to stay on and succeed. But I think we have to look to the reality of what's happened. Burnham was the favoured candidate in the sense that he was likely to win. I don't know if other candidates might win, but the only reason we exist as a party is to win parliamentary seats in order to govern. So we block the person who might have won in favour of an idea that he might potentially stand. Well, if that's our worry, every single MP in Parliament nearly has ambitions.
They do.
I mean, I don't want to be the Prime Minister, Julia. Honestly, I don't think I'm capable of doing the job.
I don't think a lot of the people who want to be Prime Minister are capable of doing the job, but I admire the honesty. But this is the thing.
The fact is, Julia, it's going to be me who's left, then, isn't it? Because most of them have got ambition. So what do we do? You know, and the other problem is this.
You could be the kingmaker.
The Labour Party allegedly are leaking that West Streeting 3 or 4 weeks ago was going to mount a challenge. Streeting denies it. And, you know, if Burnham was the elephant in the room that we're worried about, they need to concentrate their attention on the elephant in the cabinet. Well, there might be more than one elephant in the cabinet.
Well,
we're
told that Andy Burnham reckons he needs any person running for leadership would need 81 MPs to back them to stand. We're told that Andy Burnham had cleared 100. Wes Streeting's people apparently are claiming he's got 200. I mean, there are 400 odd MPs. There's quite a lot to go around. The question is, of course, who the Labour Party membership would want, and they tend to vote for candidates on the left. They're loving the likes of Ed Miliband right now.
Exactly. Dennis Skinner always used to say this to me. Why on earth do you think I get selected and elected for the NEC every 12 months? I said, I don't know, Dennis, tell me. He said, because they always vote left in the Labour Party. That's what they do.
That's a rather good impression, that is.
And it's true, I think.
But honestly, you said a few moments ago, you don't want there to be a Labour leadership contest. You don't want there to be a challenge, because what you want is the Prime Minister to stay on and to succeed. Do you think that Keir Starmer is capable? You said you wouldn't run to be Prime Minister because you don't think you're up to the job. Do you think he's capable of being a good Prime Minister? Because there's not much evidence of it so far. Are you yourself threatened to rebel on issues like the random, out-of-the-blue decision to, you know, scrap jury trials? He's had to U-turn. I think are we on 15 U-turns now? I lose track. He just throwing stuff, you know, literally plucking things out of a hat and making these announcements. Everyone's going crazy, including his own backbenchers and supporters. It goes back in the hat. He U-turns. Is he even capable of doing a good job?
I think he is. I do. Truly, I do.
Really?
I think he's doing a good job on the international stage. I think he managed to get the US President Trump into a position where he semi-apologised for the insult on our
By all means,
British...
that was the king.
Soldiers and so on. It might have been the king as well. The king would be entitled to voice an opinion on that, in my view. So I think he's doing a good job. I think he's respected in the European Union as well.
Oh, God, no, they love him. They love him because he's bringing Britain back into the EU.
I think he's fostered good relationships there. On the domestic front, I have to be honest. I think the stuff that we are rebelling on is the stuff that was never mentioned in the manifesto, and it's the stuff that does come as a surprise to us. So I said to Keir, stop marching us up hills to march us back down again. I said to him directly, get rid of this daft idea on juries. It's not going to work. But please give us a bit of notice. Consult with the PLP. Give us a chance to argue and debate issue. But that's not happening.
But isn't this the thing? So you think he's doing fine on the international stage? That, by the way, that includes the EU. We're no longer part of it. I know you lot are desperate to go back in. But yeah, he's doing fine because he most of the time basically just does what they want. But also he doesn't have to consult anybody about that. But, you know, you think he's doing fine on, what, Chagos Islands, surrendering those? Do you think he's doing fine on, I mean, basically not actually having the defences for our country? We're only at, what, 2.3%, climbing to 2.5%. of spending on defence. I mean, you think he's doing well on that front?
No, I think that the polls suggest that we're not doing well on a lot of fronts, actually. But I'm not entirely convinced it's Keir Starmer's fault, because I think people around him have got a role to play.
But he appoints those people.
I think, well, I think that's
no, but
a fair question.
It's not like he hasn't got special advisors who've just been randomly plucked from nowhere. The man in charge, a man or woman in charge. Sorry, it's the Labour Party, so it's always a straight white man. You know the rules. A man in charge of the Labour Party. You're the ones obsessed with this stuff, and then always. And by the way, Andy Burnham, straight white man.
I know.
Where's at least he's gay? You know.
If there was a challenge on Keir Starmer, and I hope there's not going to be one, I would prefer a woman leader.
Why?
I think it's time the Labour Party had a woman.
Why?
I think women are great.
Why?
Because I think we've made excuses for too long about
why would a woman be better?
Well, because I think in my own personal relationship, my missus tends to be mild-mannered, doesn't panic, doesn't overreact, give me advice.
Is that a strong trait in female politicians?
I think women have got a tendency to calm things down to a frenzy, actually.
You met Liz Truss?
And not panic. I've met Liz.
This idea that women and all men have a different. You think all women, or most women, have that tendency, so women may be better in these jobs? I mean, with all due respect, it's a bit sodding patronising. Women are a certain way. I mean, are we good at washing up as well?
I'm better at washing up than my wife, I can tell you. But I think it is a bit patronising, and I don't mean it to sound like that. But why does it always have to be this man or that man?
Well, I'll tell you why that is. I'll tell you why the Tories just accidentally, without even thinking about it, keep electing either women or people of colour or women and people of colour. It's because they don't care about this stuff. It's not relevant. So people get ahead based on their abilities, as opposed to you tick a box, you can do that. You tick a box, you can do that. That's why the Labour Party doesn't have top quality or women candidates, because you tick boxes. And because you don't actually, it's an actual serious problem within the Labour Party. Let's come back to some domestic policies there. Your Prime Minister, the man you think that is doing a good job and can be a successful Prime Minister, despite the fact he keeps appointing terrible advisors, he gives terrible advice and following that advice and then backtracking on it. He has cancelled elections he's allowed, because let's face it, it's up to him finally. He's allowed elections to be cancelled in 29 different local councils in May. They're going to be delayed. Some councils are going to serve 7 years in their terms instead of 4 years because of these elections being cancelled. And these are largely in Labour constituencies, in Labour councils, and that's largely them agreeing to that. 4+ million people are going to lose out on their right to vote. He's not a Democrat, is he?
Well, the policy decision on that was about those authorities which are potentially changing the makeup of the authority, i.e. unitary. And it was a decision made by council leaders.
They were given the option.
I agree, they were given the option. And that was a decision
by the government to give them the option.
It was.
So Keir Starmer's allowed it?
I think it was a mistake. I think it smacks of desperation. I think it sounds like it's undemocratic to people who want to vote in local elections. I think it was a mistake, but I wasn't advising the PM at the time, or indeed whoever it was in the cabinet which took the decision. I suspect it wasn't.
But he doesn't want a Greater Manchester mayoral election. He doesn't want a leadership election. He doesn't want a local government election. He tried desperately to overturn the biggest vote for anything in this country's ever voted for, the 2016 referendum to leave Europe. He tried to overturn that for 3 years as Shadow Brexit Secretary. Have we just got a Prime Minister who doesn't really trust the British people?
Well, I think that's why this decision yesterday causes me real concern, because I think it does suggest that the Prime Minister is weak, not stronger. I wished it spoke to a strength of a leader who was prepared to have a challenge. I don't think it does. And I think the real honesty is, I think Keir Starmer, although it makes me worry, I think the potential for a leadership contest has got greater now as a result.
Very interesting. And do you think he'd win it?
I think people might be a bit surprised, because I think the Labour Party membership don't want all of this nonsense, and they want the PM, who is elected as the leader and Prime Minister, to continue. Look what happened when we tried to get rid of Corbyn. The membership were very cross with us. They kept the leader of the Labour Party because that person was the leader. I think Starmer I honestly believe this. I think Starmer would probably win if it meant a contest in the membership.
Yeah, but well, that's he'd have to get that. He could already be out by the MPs first, couldn't he? Carl Taylor, so interesting.
Well, no, because he gets automatic right to stand as the leader.
That's a good point.
If it was a contest, he would be in the race.
Yeah, but if you've lost the majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party, that's not going to look good, is it? Let's talk about pubs. We're either in a pub or we're talking about pubs on this show. Usual rules, but what sounds like it's going to be some good news later today from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves in terms of a bailout for pubs worth 300 million quid. What does it involve, and is that enough?
Yeah, well, it's probably not enough, but it's a step in the right direction. And the issue here is around the business rates that pubs and any businesses pay. And that rate that you pay, that tax, it's kind of like the business version of a council tax, is calculated based on various things, including the rent that you might pay for that building. And there's two issues that have happened at the same time here. One is that they were last calculated during lockdowns when things were cheaper. So they've had this kind of uprating, but also there was this COVID relief that was phased out. And it meant that some businesses were facing, over 100% increases. Some pubs were facing over 100% increases.
We're talking tens of thousands of pounds more.
Yeah,
just to be found out of thin air.
Yeah, absolutely. They would just have to squeeze out of the very little profits that they make, more likely from having to cut staff. And when you add it to the national insurance increases they've got, the minimum wage increases they've got, many pubs are saying we simply are just going to go out of business. So there's going to be some kind of relief today so that those rates don't go up as much, or perhaps the relief.
But again, as always with these things, it's only temporary, so we're going to be facing the same again. I discovered the other day that apparently the pubs that show football, which is a really big part, like getting people into the pub, and they don't pay the same rate as we would pay to get the Sky package for the footy. They have rate because they're going to have a load of people watching it. But the rate they pay is based on their business rates. So when their business rates go up, all these other costs go up as well.
Well, exactly. It just adds to everything. And it's interesting, you make the point about how this is temporary. I wonder if this will become something like we have with the fuel duty freeze, where every budget they say the fuel duty is about to be unfrozen, but it becomes politically impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible to do it. I just love the fact that when we spoke to the guy who started the campaign the other week, banning Labour MPs from pubs. I think that is probably one of the most genius campaigns that would actually, if you want to change the world, ban your local MP from the pub, and that will actually focus minds. But of course, there are some pubs they won't be able to be banned from because they won't exist anymore. We see numerous pubs going under, but the Revolt collection, the Revolution bars, the Revolut bars, the beach pubs, they are looking at collapsing. 3,000 jobs at risk. I keep saying this about hospitality. When hospitality loses jobs, if it was a steelworks, if it was somewhere in one place and everyone's going, that warehouse or that factory is losing this many jobs, everyone would be up in arms. The government would be there with a bailout to help them out. But because these are jobs that 20 here, 100 there, 30 there, it's across the country. We don't see it as the same sort of dire need, but we're looking at so many jobs going.
And pubs are crucial to our culture. And by the way, I think we should be clear here. The reason pubs are going to get this relief is because pubs are quite good at organising and campaigning. But other hospitality businesses, cafes,
restaurants,
small restaurants and stuff, are going to be having the same problems, but maybe don't have that same lobbying voice. But I think if you speak to people that own pubs, certainly, not big brewery chains, but like the independent ones, they don't want to run as charities. They can run as a business as long as the state does not create this environment where labour costs are so high, energy costs are so high, taxes are so high that it just becomes unprofitable.
They don't want to, exactly, no one's looking for a handout. It's not a subsidy. It's like, you could only tax, the business rates is a tax, all the VAT, all the cost most of the cost of a pint of beer or a glass of wine is tax in this country. I think we're all amazed when we go to Europe and you go, how much for a glass of wine or a pint of beer? Like, what? These are choices that the government makes, and it has a big impact. Let's hope that none of these publicans who are looking at possibly going under are suffering from rejection sensitivity, shall we? Because this is an extraordinary story. There's this woman, Sophie Stone, a neurodivergent events freelancer, apparently. She's been awarded £12,000 at a tribunal after complaining that her boss told her to stop thinking outside the box. get back in your box. Apparently, she'd asked. She was invited to the. She works from home most of the time. You have to turn up once a month. There was a work summer party, and she asked if there would be a breakout area at the work summer party in case she got overwhelmed. Already at this point, I've lost the will to live. And apparently, the comment saying, "Well, stop thinking outside the box." There was something about she and a mate were going to be able to sit in someone's car if they were overwhelmed. I mean, for the love of God. But apparently this violated her human right to respect because she was being instructed to act neurotypical and not to rock the boat. She's won 12 grand basically for disability, harassment and victimisation. I mean, we don't stand a chance as an economy, do we? We don't stand a chance, Michael.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is just unbelievable nonsense. Like, I mean, rejection sensitivity. I think I have that. Isn't that, nobody, that's just part of the human condition. It shouldn't stop you doing your job. And all I can say is, thank goodness that the day one right to sue your employer was removed from the workers' rights bill, or the employment rights bill that's coming through, because otherwise we'd be seeing, people doing this literally in the first week, within the first hour of their job. They would have been able to sue their employer for comments like this.
And as you say, many employers, they pay up. Yeah, I know people who they've been accused of various things. They go, everyone knows it costs you, £5 grand payout or whatever it is, and it will save you 10 grand in legal fees. And I know a number of small employers have gone, I don't care. Yeah, and I'm going to fight it on principle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the real sad thing about this story is there will be plenty of people that do have autism or mental health conditions who actually do just want to go to work and do a good job. But people like this who take these spurious cases will just make employers think, they'll never admit this because it'd be illegal, but they'll think, I'm not going to take a chance.
Of course they're not. They're not insane. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's just, but this is the crazy thing. If you don't, if you're going to struggle with going to the Christmas party or the summer party, don't go to the summer party, and no one's going to force you to go to the summer party.
Yeah,
if that's it, I mean, I'm sorry, but again, it's just like, apparently because of her neurodivergent thinking, which affects her ability to process information, apparently she takes 4 hours to do a job that would take a colleague 2 hours. Well, I mean, again, so what? I mean, would we have that on this show? Like, okay, well, 2 hours before the show, you're not going to have anything ready until midday. What? And I'm supposed to go, oh, well, that's fine. We'll just hold off the show. Everyone will just wait. So I just wait another hour. I mean, I'm sorry, employers are allowed to say, I need someone who can do the job. It's mind-blowing. I think, frankly, with all due respect, they're probably well rid of her. But there you are, Sophie. We have just got to stop this namby-pambying ridiculous. This is not about helping someone with a disability. This is literally national economic suicide. Anyway, I'm going to reject you now. Don't get too oversensitive about it. And we're joined right now by Gideon Falter. He's Chief Executive at Campaign Against Anti-Semitism to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, which is, of course, marked every year. About that, well, one of the most awful, horrific events in human history. Good afternoon to you, Gideon.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, it's interesting, a lot of the times when we mark this day, we will talk to a survivor, a family member from the camps, and we talk about what happened in the past. And it's vitally important to do that. And I'm quite horrified by something like half of schools in Britain now no longer teach about Holocaust Memorial Day, which is a very big worry because you can't learn the lessons of the past if you don't know the past. But it seems to me today, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is that actually, this isn't a historical conversation anymore. This seems to me to be a conversation and a threat that is in the here and now and the future, and which is why we need to learn those lessons even more, but also learn the lessons for how we deal with things now. What do you say to that?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the message that comes out of the Holocaust traditionally is the words "never again," the slogan almost "never again," and people keep intoning this. It's something which will be said countless times by politicians today at commemorations up and down the country, and it should be the message of the Holocaust. But instead, we're now living in a country where, in common with other countries across the West, but disgracefully here in Britain, more than half of the Jewish community no longer sees a long-term future here. Yeah. And if you look at our young people particularly, that one of the things that Holocaust survivors have dedicated their lives to was to trying to educate the next generation against hatred. And we're now in a place where vast numbers of young people in this country, according to our YouGov polling, actually think extremely anti-Semitic things. 1 in 10 18 to 24-year-olds think that people are just talking about the Holocaust to further some kind of Jewish agenda. You've got now vast numbers, I think 16% of 18 to 24-year-olds who think that the October 7th atrocities, which were the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, they think that that was justified. That's 16%. If you imagine you're walking around a school corridor, 16% of those kids potentially believe that. And then it goes even further. They think now that the new Nazis are the Israelis, 48% of young people believing that. And they go in for all sorts of conspiracy theories that the Nazis themselves propagated. Things like, supporters of Israel are a bad influence on our democracy. Israel supporters control the media. That was a famous sort of Nazi narrative that Jews control the media. And then if you look at the actual impact of this, we're seeing a campaign against anti-Semitism, vast numbers of parents, children, students at universities coming to us with really serious problems. And there was, of course, the case just recently of a Labour MP, Damien Egan, Jewish MP, who wanted to go and visit a school in his constituency. The school said no, because it might inflame not the students, but the teachers.
Yep.
Now, if the teachers are too extreme to be able to countenance the presence of a Jewish MP in their midst, what does that tell you? And we're hearing allegations, for example, that the diversity coordinator who sits on the charitable trust that runs the school had in the past made comments supportive of Hamas. I mean, we're not doing a great job on the never again front if our young people are more radicalized and more bigoted than any generation that has gone before them, pretty much in living memory. If, as our Holocaust survivors who have dedicated their lives to trying to make this country a better place, trying to educate against hate with all of their might, if they are passing away, each of them saying that they are absolutely horrified by the level of extremism and anti-Semitism in this country, we're not doing a very good job. And hand-wringing at Holocaust memorial ceremonies is not going to fix it. Our politicians, successive governments need to step up.
Indeed, saying the right words. Though I did a speech for your campaign outside Number 10 after the horrific terror attack, the murders you're very kind, at Manchester synagogue. And again, words are fine, and everyone turns up and they, as you say, they wring their hands, but they're not taking action. The reality is, we've got two problems, I think. One is that we have imported anti-Semitism from huge numbers of immigrants who've come from Muslim countries where, and again, everyone gets embarrassed and a bit uncomfortable with this, where anti-Semitism is completely the norm. It is the absolutely perfectly acceptable, normal viewpoint. We've also seen it growing on the left as well. For a long time, it was only seen as a problem on the right. Massively growing on the left, the views of many of those who were supporting Jeremy Corbyn. What we see, the bots and the like online pushing a lot of this stuff. Some of the stuff, and God knows what you get on your social media, the stuff that I get. I mean, by the way, I'll be getting my 7,000, I never know, is it shekels, dollars or pounds from the Israeli government for making this comment. I keep saying to everyone, can I have it in pounds? It's worth more. I've looked at the exchange rates. I'm definitely better off getting it in pounds. Never had a single penny. I spout my views because I spout them because they're what I believe. But this thing, the conspiracy theories around this, are really quite sinister, really quite terrifying. And anyone who's not been to a Holocaust museum, anyone who's not learned about this, for the love of God, go along and see how this starts. Because when we talk about the dangers internationally, and I often talk about, we're in the 1930s internationally, but we're also well into the 1930s when it comes to dealing with anti-Semitism. And there's no doubt anti-Semitism at every time, in every country, in every nation, across the world, in every era, has been the canary in the coal mine that something is going horribly, horribly wrong. And it is extraordinary to me, the lack of action that we are seeing against anti-Semitism when we are seeing it being allowed to be just basically played out on our streets every single day without anyone doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, just look at the state of things in the UK now, where we've got these stories coming through not just of anti-Semitic extremists, but also of police forces failing abjectly to do enough. I mean, look at this scandal in the West Midlands, where the police chief and others in the top brass have tried to fit up, essentially, Israeli football supporters so that they can ban them from the town. Now, if you told me 10, 15 years ago that we were going to have a situation in which Jewish football supporters were told that they couldn't enter the city of Birmingham, the second city of the UK, if they were told that they couldn't, I would not have believed you.
I wouldn't have believed it 3 years ago.
An MP, a Jewish MP, would be turfed out of their local school by the teachers. I mean, this is the situation that we find ourselves in, where the authorities themselves are, instead of standing up to these anti-Semites, which is surely what the lesson of the Holocaust must be, instead of standing up to them, they're appeasing them. And you're absolutely right to call it out. You know, the far right was traditionally the bastion of sort of neo-Nazi hatred, but the far right, and this is not me saying this is our polling of the Jewish community. The Jewish community is saying the far right is a worry, but it is far less of a worry than the far left. But above the far left even are Islamist extremists.
Yes.
And those are the primary problem that the Jewish community perceives in the polling. And you just have to look around at some of the situations that we're seeing. There are Islamist extremists who are essentially able to call the shots in their local police force. There are teachers, far left teachers, who are able to tell their school that they don't want a Jewish MP there. Yep. And there are many, many cases.
Hey, no, by the way, sorry, the guys who decided to have their pro-Palestinian flags and drive down from the north of England to North London and drive through a largely Jewish area, driving it very close to my home, shouting with the megaphone on camera, it's all on camera, that they were going to rape the wives and daughters of Jews in the local area. They're talking about my friends, my daughter's friends. Eventually, after a big enough outcry, they got their collars felt. No prosecution. If you're not prosecuting people shouting about raping women and girls publicly on camera in a public street in daylight, you ain't taking anti-Semitism. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Can I just ask you, on a more positive note, and this is a positive note, we saw the final body of Israeli hostage, this is Rankvili, returned from Gaza. The IDF found him, not returned by Hamas, who were claiming the credit. They had mysteriously couldn't find him. He was finally returned. He's the final dead hostage. We had, thankfully, the live hostage home already after 844 days since October the 7th. There's going to be a ceremony at Hostage Square, which was when I went to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, one of the most moving experiences of my life last September, where, you know, they're going to turn off the clock that was counted those days, those days, those weeks, those months, those, you know, minutes, the seconds. Where are we on that? Where does where we are in anti-Semitism in this country and where we are with what's going on in the Middle East, where does that take us?
The first thing is that this is, frankly, a miracle. I think in the wake of October 7th, there was no one that really expected that every single last hostage, alive or dead, would be brought back from Gaza. And so I think everybody who's been watching this, and particularly people in the Jewish world, have felt that this was, frankly, a miraculous event. It's also a very sad event because, of course, the last hostage returns from Gaza dead in a coffin. Yeah. And so many of them did, including children, including a 9-month-old baby who Hamas kidnapped and then brutally murdered. Yeah. So I think the first thing is, what an achievement. The second thing, I think, is look at how this happened. This only happened that the last hostage was retrieved from Gaza because the Israeli government did not listen to Britain and others in the West who kept saying, oh, you mustn't go there, you mustn't go there, you mustn't keep on fighting. And unfortunately, this was a war in which it was necessary for Israel to go and retrieve the hostages themselves. This was not a hostage who was retrieved because Hamas kept to the terms of the ceasefire. This was a hostage who was retrieved because the Israeli army went and retrieved that hostage. And I think for many people in the West who've been throughout this whole thing, essentially doing the job of Hamas propaganda, I think need to look at themselves and realize that they failed. They failed to understand the nature of the evil terrorists that Israel was dealing with. They failed to understand what is necessary to defeat them. And Israel didn't listen. But if we in the West take our own advice that we have been giving to Israel, we are doomed. Right now, the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, is allegedly telling Keir Starmer that he thinks Hamas shouldn't have to completely disarm. What on earth is this appeasement that has taken hold of Britain? And, you know, taking it back to Holocaust Memorial Day, surely the proudest thing about Britain's involvement in the Second World War is that the policy of appeasement was something which Neville Chamberlain started and Winston Churchill resoundingly ended. And we fought tooth and nail against evil.
Absolutely.
And we realised that sometimes you have to fight your enemy and give no quarter.
Absolutely. And thank God we did. Absolutely. And I feel we're going to be fighting again. Gideon Falter, Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, thank you so much for joining us. Such an important day, Holocaust Memorial Day. Tom Slater, listening to all of that.
I'm just always pondering the question, where are the anti-fascists these days? Because if you think about the left constantly calling everyone to the right of Rachel Reeves, the F word, and yet both on our streets, but also most violently and apocalyptically in Gaza and southern Israel with Hamas's pogrom on October the 7th, you saw the closest thing that we have to a fascistic movement, the anti-Semitism, the barbarism, the desire to impose its totalitarian writ on the world, and yet everyone's been staring at their shoelaces, or worse, making excuses for them, or worse, openly supporting them. On our streets. In the future, we will look back with a mix of horror and bemusement at this period, I think.
Horror mostly, I have to say. Let's talk about the pub bailout that wasn't a bailout. It's going to be worth, we're told, 300 million quid, but it works out as £1,650 on average per pub. Is that really enough to save the Great British Pub? Well, let's talk to Tom Kerridge about that. Not only is he a Michelin-starred chef and TV presenter, he's also, of course, famously a pub owner. Very good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Lovely to talk to you. I mean, look, people might say, oh, come on, you know, you must be doing very well. You've got your Michelin stars, you've got all your successful business, you're always on the telly, you're not struggling. But how hard is it to run a pub these days?
I think they are fair points. I've been asked to appear on media and talk about things that I have a secondary form of income, and that does come from television and books, and that puts me in a very fortunate position. However, my businesses are struggling exactly the same as everybody else's within that hospitality sector. We sit there, you know, I am, for every one of me or Michelle Roux or Gordon Ramsay or anybody else that appears on television has businesses in hospitality, there are hundreds of thousands of other businesses that are not in that fortunate position with secondary incomes. Our local pubs, our coffee shops, our restaurants, our hotels, everything that's in hospitality is incredibly under pressure. The margins are so small. Most, if not, I would say 95% of operators are just about breaking even, if not making losses. So at the minute, the sector is under huge economic pressure. It is a culmination of things over the last 5-10 years, post-COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, of issues that have dropped into it. But there are massive things that come through food inflation, through utility bill rises, through national insurance increases, through minimum wage increases, and then the business rates that have then dropped in. So there is a huge amount of all those margins that have been eradicated. If you think food inflation, for example, on average is up about 17%, but on prime cuts or things that use beef, for example, that appears on pretty much everybody's menu, that's up over 40%. Ouch. So these are, you know, all of these sort of things, and all of these are added costs that you can't necessarily, or you just can't. We've got to a point where it's saturation that you can't put those costs onto the guests and consumer.
The obvious thing is, oh, well, put up the price of your steak or whatever by 40%. People won't pay that in most pubs. They simply they haven't got the money, or they'll choose to have it home. And this was a problem, wasn't it? COVID and lockdown exacerbated things. I still remember a picture popped up on my, you know, when your phone every now and then pictures pop up of me and my husband and my brother having a drink in the pub the first day we were legally allowed to sit outside a pub, and it was so exciting for everybody. But people got out of the habit of going to the pub. Oh, I can get the drink for a fraction of the price at the local supermarket. But of course, we miss out on all that, the banter, the camaraderie, the meeting people, and keeping local businesses afloat. This help that we were told was coming was, it's another government U-turn, of course, but we were told this would help pubs. But bizarrely, not restaurants, not hotels, not cafes. I don't know why we apparently don't care about them, but the amount of help that was offered. Interestingly, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves sending out an underling, so she clearly wasn't sure she was going to get that much credit for it. We're told it's too little and it's too late. What is an extra average of £1,650 a year? What difference is that going to make to the average pub? Because does that even cover the minimum wage increase or the national insurance increase?
No, I think what's happened is I think that's the average across the pubs, and I think actually, listen, the way that the rateable value is put together and trying to be understood by our industry and everybody else's is incredibly difficult. I do think that pubs that don't quite make the £100,000 rateable value, their actual rates will go down, but there's quite a few in the majority that it still goes up. It's still not very, very helpful. So in some cases, it actually will help some of the very smaller independent pubs that don't have very large revenues. And the difference between the way that the businesses, the calculation, pubs are done on turnover, whereas the rest of hospitality, restaurants, hotels are done on turnover and square footage, which is one thing for the rateable value and trying to understand that, which is an incredibly complicated system and just doesn't work. It isn't fit for purpose. And we can clearly see over the last... this age, No, and you can clearly see over the last few months that it just doesn't make sense for anybody, let alone hospitality. I think the bigger issue is that pubs now operate with many food offerings. Many of them operate just like restaurants. Many of them operate with the same sort of... with the same costs, and the same for hotels. And the difference between ordering a drink in a hotel bar or ordering a drink in a pub, the costs are exactly the same. The minimum wage is the same. Everything else that comes into it is exactly the same. So a blanket help for hospitality would have been much better than just singling out pubs. I think there's only, out of 7 people, one in hospitality, 1 in 7 work in pubs. That's the other 6 work in every other side of hospitality.
But again, also, and it's a really key way, and Claire's in the studio with me as well. They've got teenagers. It's one of the. And it's how I started out, working in doing pub lunches, working behind the bar, working as a waitress. It's actually, it's a key entry to the world of work for lots of young people. Again, a lot of pubs, they can't afford to hire people. Why would you hire someone who's a teenager when you're having to pay the minimum wage that costs a fortune, when they're at that point probably not worth the minimum wage? What help would you like? Because we talked to a guest yesterday, and we actually talked last week or the other week before, Andy Lennox, the guy who started that campaign basically banning Labour MPs from pubs, which I think has had quite a big effect on Labour MPs. But you don't want charity. You're not looking for a handout here. These are proud business owners who wanted to provide a service and to their local community, and we want to support that. What could the government do that would actually help?
The biggest thing is bringing VAT in line with the rest of Europe. I mean, we operate on the highest VAT costs across Europe, where everywhere else sits between 8 and 12, maybe 15%.
You're at 20%.
That does is... We're at 20%, and what that does, because most other businesses, they have VAT on whatever they do, but you can get it back. Whereas hospitality, there is nothing that you can get back. So what you need to be able to do is those percentage margins will allow hospitality operators to operate, to be able to pay bills.
So this is all within the power of the government. Like these international inflationary differences on food or on energy, they have the power to they don't have to give anything. They just have to not take the same amount in tax. That's what they need to do. And then we would keep those businesses going, paying tax. We would keep those jobs going, paying tax, and we'd keep these vital parts of our local communities going.
Yeah, I think it's a harder sell. I understand when you say to somebody, listen, we need to be able to pay less tax up front, but long term, it is help. It is about growth. It is about the future. Short term, this government it's short of cash. We hear it all the time. And no matter who you speak to, I've been very fortunate to be able to speak to a number of secretaries of state, and whether it's from education, whether it's from health, or whether it's from business and finance, they all need help. They all need, and it comes comes from the Treasury, and it comes to them being able to give them more money. The Treasury hasn't got more money, so it is.
But
so
this is a short-term gain for the Treasury that long-term is going to cost jobs. And also, again, hospitality, huge part of our tourism industry, a huge industry in the country. And people come, they want to have the pubs and the restaurants. That's what they're looking for. We'll have to leave it there. You're a great advocate for the industry. Tom Kerridge, Michelin-starred chef, TV presenter, and, of course, pub owner as well. Really appreciate you joining us there. Claire Pearsall, listening to all of that. I mean, this thing, no one's asking for a handout, but they can't function on the tax. They're being taxed out of existence. And it's specifically the tax.
It is. And what the government is also doing is pitting the industry against each other by saying, well, pubs, you're now more important than restaurants, cafes, you know, florists, hairdressers. But they're all operating the way.
The pubs all serve food. They're just treated as local restaurants, effectively. And
they are. It's the same cost.
It's short-termism. This is government this is policy being made by ministers and civil servants who've never worked in the private sector, have never looked at a balance sheet, haven't got a clue how to do this, and don't understand why people are hired and why people aren't hired. Because the public sector, we'll just hire some more people and put everyone's taxes up. You can't force people to be a customer in your pub if you put your prices up. Isabel Oakeshott joining us down the line right now to talk about a brilliant exclusive she's got, which is, well, the opposite. It's the very opposite of the brilliant campaign of Operation Raise the Colours of, you know, hey, let's actually see our national flag. Let's have not just the Union Jack, but also the St George's Cross flying proudly on our high streets, and around our towns and villages and cities. This is Operation Lower the Colours. Tell us about it, Isabel.
Well, I was a bit depressed when I found out about this counter campaign, Operation Lower the Colours, because I think that Operation Raise the Colours has been quite uplifting in many ways, quite literally. It's brought a lot of people together. It's cheered up some pretty dismal spaces, made a number of us feel a new sense of national pride. Flags, I think most of our listeners will agree, shouldn't be anything other than a source of that word, pride, and a feeling of this is who we are, and it is something that can actually bring people together. But in a sign of how bitterly divided our culture has become, it seems that there are certain people who are truly offended by the British flag and think that it's a terrible thing, believe that it has somehow become a kind of symbol of racism or anti-immigration. And they have now launched a covert operation, which is being done as usual through sort of deep sort of, I don't know whether they're using WhatsApp, but anyway.
Surely they're using Blue Sky Social, surely.
Who knows what they're doing? But what we do know, because we've got screenshots of it, is that they're exchanging messages. They are using a system called UMaps, which is an open interactive map system, to share information about where Union flags have been put up, and updating each other on the status of those flags. Are they partially removed, still in place, completely removed, or maybe to be left? I'm not sure how many of them they're going to agree to leave. And this is an organised campaign to tear them down. Now, at the moment, we're only aware of two hotspots for this. One is in Stockport, and the other in Oxford, where there's been a lot of controversy surrounding flags. Oxford, very near where I live, pretty much the wokest city in the UK.
I've driven to Oxford recently a couple of times, and there's a lot of Union flags and England flags along sort of the roundabouts approaching the city. I remember thinking, oh, that's a surprise. How wonderful.
No. Well, you know that we did a story last week about an Labour Oxford councillor who was caught on tape. She was recorded describing the people that put these flags up as bastards.
Lovely.
So Oxford, we actually went out onto the streets of Oxford last week and talked to some ordinary citizens, and we found very divided opinions. You know, didn't take us any time to find somebody who used the word despicable in relation to raising flags, and then a Chinese student who was bewildered and sort of said, I don't understand. Where I come from in our country, the flag is a great thing. It's a source of pride, and I'm not remotely bothered by it.
Well, that's pretty much every country in the world. I mean, I'd love to see these people going to take down flags in America. Good luck with that one. But it is extraordinary. We are the only country in the world where there is a whole swathe of people, largely our sort of, public sector classes and left-wingers, who seem to think that our flag is a source of national sort of, embarrassment and shame rather than of national pride. I mean, it's quite bizarre. And again, these people, they're opposed to flying flags, except when it's, the Palestinian flag, the EU flag, or they love an EU flag, or, the so-called progressive pride trans flag. They love those flags. They put them in their bios on their social media. They fly them out the windows. They wear them at marches. They just don't like the national flags.
It's very depressing, really, but we should not be depressed by it, because I think there's going to be a counter campaign. I think we may be hearing later on one of our shows from the two guys who are behind Raise the Colours as a campaign. They will tell us how they plan to respond to this. I'm sure they're a bit dejected. In fact, I know they were, because they were not actually aware of this Lower the Colours nasty little counter campaign until I told them about it yesterday. They got straight onto it. They've been looking into who and what is behind it, and I suspect their attitude will be, you take them down, we're going to put them
absolutely. Right. The business to get into, I reckon, selling ladders. This is the new growth industry.
That is a good point. That is a good point.
So it's Raise the Colours, Lower the Colours, Raise the Colours Again campaign. Absolutely, great to talk to you. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. But Claire Pixel, it is utterly bizarre, isn't it, that people feel such animosity and anger about our national flag. And the only reason this came about was because local councils kept sort of saying not flying the Union flag, not flying the St George flag. But absolutely fine for anyone in Wales to have the Welsh flag. Absolutely fine for anyone in Scotland to have the St Andrews flag. But the English flag, oh no, that's just racist. It's like, no, you've allowed it to be taken by the racists because you're not flying it. But they're quite happy to have, Palestinian flags or any other celebration of any other country's flag, some cultural day, but never our own culture, never our own identity.
I loved it when I saw the flags popping up, especially around my village, which was the last place I expected that to happen. But they were brilliant. They look absolutely fantastic.
It's beautiful. Both flags are beautiful.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
They absolutely are.
I feel good when I see those flags.
And it is nice, and it makes me smile every time I drive in. The big roundabout on the entrance to my village, there is a huge cross of St George up on the flagpost. It looks great. They're starting to look a bit tatty at the moment. They've been through the winter, and there's a lot of chatter on the local Facebook pages of people who are saying, we're going to replace them. They're putting their name to it. They're not embarrassed. And the local councillors, Green Party, are really unhappy about it.
I don't know how you can. I've got the Labour councillor in my North London constituency, but Green councillor even worse. Hey, though, let's talk very briefly about the by-election in Gorton.
Yes.
I could get Gorton Denton. Apparently, the Green Party keeps getting it wrong as well. But we've got the first candidate. We know it's not going to be Andy Burnham as the Labour candidate. Big battles over was he or was he not told whether he was blocked or not. I mean, who cares? I mean, you always knew you were going to be blocked, Andy Burnham. Who are you kidding? But Matthew Goodwin. Someone I've got so much time for, a former academic. His daily blogs are absolutely superb. His analysis, his polling. He is going to be the Reform candidate. Yesterday, and let's play a very quick clip, Labour Party, the official Labour Party account, put out this post on social media of Matthew Goodwin.
I was lucky enough, or unfortunate enough, to be in Manchester a few days ago, and the energy in this room is 10 times what it was in Manchester. So, congratulations.
Well, they put, this is what Reform's latest candidate thinks about where he's standing to represent. Except, if anyone who'd actually recognised that clip, and it was pointed out within seconds, I was among the people who pointed out and knew straight away, he wasn't slagging off Manchester as a city. Oh, God, no, what a terrible city. He was talking about, he just left the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, which Labour Party would have known. To make that clip, you would have known the context of that. They knew it. Everyone, community notes, everything like that, but they've left it up. Other cabinet ministers have retweeted it, and they're like, but this is the thing. I'll call it out, whichever party does this. When you insult voters like this by making something up, or making up a lie about somebody, I don't care whether I agree with the candidate or disagree with the candidate, agree with the party, disagree with the party, you're insulting voters.
Yeah, you are. Absolutely, and they should be better than that. You go and you look at the person's policies. I'm sorry, I'm a bit old-fashioned when it comes to politics.
You'll never catch on.
You look at the policies of that individual, but also I think that the Labour Party may have committed an offence against the Representation of the People Act, which states that you cannot make falsehoods against a candidate of a political party.
Oh, wonderful. We like that. No, but they
is.
bang on about disinformation and misinformation online. And they put out some of this. And when the Tories have done that, I've told them off as well. Well, they've done some dodgy things in some of their campaigning, pretending that their social media account is an official sort of account, a sort of neutral account on something. Again, it's wrong. It shouldn't be done. And you cannot bang on about disinformation, misinformation and lies if you're doing it as well. I mean, everything that comes out of the Green Party mouths is definitely a lie, but there we are. We don't know who the other candidates are going to be, but there's no doubt at all this story is going to keep on going. This is going to be a battle royal, but apparently it's now likely to be between Reform and the Greens. What a choice.
And I think that the poor people of Manchester being given that choice is quite frightening, actually. They need to have a good selection of candidates, and hopefully they will.
Let's talk about school. I'll take you back, but you remember when Tony Blair came up with this great idea that kids who were basically very badly behaving, even violent in school, should not be expelled? That worked out really well when another 29 kids in the class of 30 basically lost their education as well as that kid. Well, this Labour government has come up with the same madness as well. Schools going to be told to stop sending suspended pupils home from school under their plan, saying children at school in England will no longer be routinely sent home by default when they get into trouble. As if that happens all the time anyway. You have to do quite a lot to get suspended from school, but they will need to be kept not necessarily in that classroom, but in school rather than roaming the streets, possibly becoming involved in crime or just sitting on their phone or at home with their parents, who may well be part of the problem. Is that solution though? Let's talk to Tim Clark. He's a former head teacher. Afternoon to you, Tim.
Afternoon, Julia.
Sorry,
good to see you.
Mr. Clark, sorry. Sit up straight, everybody. Straighten your tie. The head teacher basically told, look, if their kid is disruptive, if they're violent, you can take them off the premises. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep them at school, but not in the classroom. So presumably they have to find another room for these kids and someone to supervise them. Is that even vaguely practical?
OK, well, it is. I am very worried about this, and I endorse everything you said in your introduction. But I think this is actually a lazy policy, because what it's basically saying, kids are badly behaved, the schools have got to deal with it. And the reason why it's lazy is because so far we have seen no other suggestions or options open to schools. And if what the government was saying, look, we're going to do this for schools, give you these extra staff to look after these difficult kids, give you extra facilities, you said about withdrawing them from lessons, fine, but schools need space to do that. They need staff to supervise them. And this is why I say it is a lazy policy. But I just make two or three general points. The first is, I totally endorse your first point. Yes, tens of thousands of kids are suspended. That is worrying. But 9 million kids are not suspended. And they should come first. We need to provide a safe, happy, vibrant environment for them to learn. And if that means a minority need to be removed, either from the lesson or from the school, then so be it. But they have to come first. The second point is that I think, again, this is being lazy on the part of the government. It's very easy to reduce the number of suspensions. You just say you don't do it. The bigger question is, how do you improve their behaviour? That's a much more difficult
If you haven't got some ultimate powers, I mean, you can't knock them around anymore. You can't beat them with a cane.
But you don't improve pupils' behaviours by removing the sanctions available to schools. And let's face it, what sanctions are available to school? You can put a kid in detention, you can isolate them, you can give them extra work, jobs to do around the school, picking up litter, you can call the parents in. But once you've done that,
there's nothing
what else do you do? And the third point I should make, which I think is again a sign of real laziness on the part of the government, the single biggest cause of exclusion, I mean, some of these figures are appalling, 19,000 of them for physical assaults on teachers. And then we wonder why we've got a teacher recruitment and retention crisis. But the single biggest cause is persistent disruption. Now, surely the clue is in the title. It means schools have already tried everything else. And what the government is saying is just keep doing the same things which have failed. That's why we're excluding them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the frustration, and I've mentioned on the show earlier, and this has been a sort of one of those debates, and I know it always goes through, whenever I see anybody who says, oh, we shouldn't exclude pupils, or they shouldn't be sent home, whenever I see any of that, I always check someone's bio. I want to know, what kind of school did you go to? And invariably, it's someone who went to a private school where that behaviour wasn't tolerated, the other parents wouldn't put up with it, and you've got kids coming from privilege, or they went to a grammar school where everyone was there and bright and ready to learn. They'd had their broccoli for dinner the night before and a good night's sleep. They haven't gone to a bog standard comp where there are kids who are routinely disruptive, who could be violent, who are not there to learn, who've got their phone on, not interested, kicking, shouting at the teacher. They've not been in those classrooms. They don't understand what it's like for the other pupils or the teacher, and they're full of sympathy. And we probably should be full of sympathy for the kids who are acting up, because they largely come from
every
bad
child deserves
lives.
an education. Every child deserves an education.
But it can't be a problem for the other 29.
Yeah, but not at the expense of the others. And I'd be having been the head of a comprehensive and of a grammar school, I'd be careful what you say about grammar schools, because they have no additional powers over discipline over their pupils than any school.
It's about the children who turn up to school and the parents' attitude.
Well, therein you touch another really important point. I mean, a percentage that is often not mentioned, kids only spend 17.5% of the year in school. 82.5% of a kid's life is outside of school. Now, I'm not saying schools don't have a role to play. They have a crucial role to play. But if you really want to improve behaviour, you have to consider what goes on outside of the school gates.
Yeah, oh no, you only have to look around and see what kids are getting away with their parents to wonder why. Of course, they don't expect to sit down and shut up and be told what to do by their teachers, or to be respectful, because they're not expected to do that at home. But this thing, what is the solution? Because realistically, a lot of these children, they need extra help. We need intervention from a very early age. We're getting kids who are being suspended at primary school. Imagine a kid being suspended from primary school for violence, and it's mind blowing. But we need very early intervention, and that costs money. That takes time.
Absolutely.
But realistically, some of these kids' home lives, they need to be out of their homes.
Yeah, they do. I mean, that is certainly true of many kids. I think there are a number of things. It isn't all negative. No school can or should be run purely on sanctions. No. Sanctions are crucially important, but I've always believed in a very happy, vibrant school. Extracurricular activities, sport, music, drama. Get the kids involved. Get the kids wanting to be in school. Pastoral care, counselling, mentoring. All of those things have a really positive role to play. But as you say, they cost money. And at the moment, many schools are reducing staff to balance the books. Yeah. That's where, the government should be looking. Can we provide additional staff? Can we provide additional facilities? I mean, in my second school in London, we had an isolation room. Yeah. That had to be staffed. Well, a small school might not have room for that.
Or the member of staff.